Emma Rodriguez had always been invisible, or at least that's how she felt working on the 42nd floor of Blackwood Enterprises. At 22, she possessed a natural beauty that seemed to radiate from within, with warm amber eyes that sparkled with kindness and silky auburn hair that caught the light whenever she moved through the corridors. Her modest floral dresses and gentle demeanor made her blend into the background of the bustling corporate world. Exactly where she preferred to be, Gabriel Blackwood was everything Emma wasn't. At 34, he commanded the top floor of the gleaming skyscraper with an authority that made grown men nervous and sent secretaries scurrying for cover. His steel gray eyes held secrets, and his perfectly tailored suits couldn't hide the powerful frame beneath. Gabriel had built his empire from nothing, and his reputation for being ruthless in business was matched only by whispers about his cold heart when it came to matters of romance. For 18 months, Emma had worked diligently in the administrative pool, handling correspondence and filing reports. She arrived early, stayed late, and performed her duties with quiet efficiency. But every morning when Gabriel strode through the office, his presence seemed to electrify the air around him. Emma would steal glances from behind her computer screen, watching the way he moved with predatory grace, the way his dark hair was always perfectly styled, the way other employees practically bowed when he passed. Her innocent heart had begun weaving impossible fantasies around this untouchable man. She would imagine conversations they might have, dream about him noticing her kindness, picture herself as someone worthy of his attention. These daydreams became her secret escape from the mundane reality of her simple life. In a tiny studio apartment across town, the trouble began on a particularly stressful Wednesday afternoon. Emma had spent the previous night tossing and turning, plagued by the most vivid dream she'd ever experienced. In her dream, Gabriel had looked at her with tender eyes, had spoken to her with warmth and affection, had even mentioned building a future together. The dream felt so real that she woke with tears in her eyes and her heart aching with longing, feeling overwhelmed and needing to share her confusion with someone. Emma decided to call her best friend Sophia during her lunch break. She found a quiet corner near the emergency stairwell, far from the busy office chatter, and pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. "Sophia, I need to tell you about the most incredible dream," Emma whispered into her phone, her cheeks flushing pink with embarrassment. "I dreamed that Gabriel noticed me, really noticed me. In the dream, he was so gentle and caring. Nothing like the intimidating boss everyone fears. He held my hand and told me I was beautiful, that he'd been watching me all this time." Emma paused, running her fingers through her hair nervously. "I know it sounds ridiculous, but in the dream, he said he wanted to take care of me, to show me a world I'd never imagined. He spoke about us having a real relationship, about him protecting me and cherishing me like I was something precious." Her voice grew softer, more vulnerable as she continued. "The strangest part was how safe I felt with him. In the dream, all his coldness melted away, and underneath was this passionate, devoted man who saw something special in me. He told me he'd been lonely too, that he needed someone genuine and pure in his life." Emma's heart raced as she remembered the dream's intensity. "Sophia, I've never even been kissed properly, and here I am fantasizing about the most powerful man in the city. Sometimes I catch myself watching his hands during meetings, wondering what it would feel like to have them touch my face gently. I watch the way his lips move when he speaks to others and imagine what it would be like to hear him say my name with affection instead of just professional acknowledgement." She shook her head, laughing nervously at herself. "Listen to me, talking like some lovesick schoolgirl, but there's something about him that makes me feel things I've never felt before. When he's in the same room, and barely concentrate, my heart pounds so hard, I'm sure everyone can hear it. I probably should quit before I embarrass myself completely." Emma took a deep breath before concluding, "I just wish, for once in my life, someone like Gabriel would see past my ordinary exterior and recognize that I have so much love to give. I dream of being someone's everything, building a life filled with tenderness and passion. Is that too much to hope for?" Without double-checking the recipient, Emma hit send and tucked her phone away, feeling slightly relieved to have shared her secret burden. She returned to her desk with a lighter step, unaware that in her flustered state, She had accidentally selected Gabriel's name from her contacts instead of Sophia's. 25 minutes later, Emma's desk phone rang with an internal call that made her blood freeze in her veins. Emma Rodriguez. My office. Immediately, Gabriel's voice was ice cold and commanding, carrying an undertone that suggested something far more serious than routine business. Emma's hands began shaking uncontrollably as the horrible realization dawned on her. She grabbed her phone and frantically checked her sent messages, her heart sinking as she saw Gabriel's name at the top of her recent contacts. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as she understood the magnitude of her mistake. Walking down the executive hallway felt like approaching her own execution. Her heels clicked against the marble floor in a rhythm that matched her thundering heartbeat. Gabriel's office door loomed before her like the entrance to a predator's den, and she knew that whatever waited on the other side would change her life forever. Gabriel's corner office was a testament to power and success. Expensive artwork adorned the walls, and the massive mahogany desk seemed to dwarf everything else in the room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city below, but Emma barely noticed the luxury surrounding her because Gabriel stood with his back to her, his broad shoulders tense with what she could only assume was anger. Sit, he commanded, without turning around, his voice carrying an authority that made Emma immediately comply. She lowered herself into one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her heart hammering so violently she felt dizzy. The silence stretched endlessly before Gabriel finally turned to face her, and when Emma saw his expression, she wished she could disappear entirely. His steel-gray eyes were unreadable, but there was something dangerous lurking beneath the surface that made her feel like prey caught in a trap. So, Gabriel said slowly, moving to perch on the edge of his desk directly in front of her chair, "You dream about me touching your face gently." His voice was low and controlled, but Emma could hear the underlying current of something that made her shiver with both fear and an unwelcome thrill. The cruel proposition. Emma's face turned crimson as Gabriel's piercing gaze seemed to see straight through to her soul. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words emerged. Only a small whimper of mortification that made her want to sink into the leather chair and disappear forever. "You imagine what my lips would feel like saying your name with affection," Gabriel continued, his voice maintaining that dangerous calm that made Emma's pulse race for all the wrong reasons. He leaned forward slightly, and she caught the intoxicating scent of his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine that made her head spin. "Mr. Blackwood, I can explain," Emma finally managed to whisper, her voice barely audible above the sound of her own thundering heartbeat. "That message wasn't meant for you. I was talking to my friend about a silly dream. I made a terrible mistake." Gabriel's lips curved into what might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Instead, it reminded Emma of a wolf sizing up its next meal. "A mistake," he repeated thoughtfully, standing up and beginning to pace slowly around her chair, like a predator circling its prey. "You accidentally confessed your deepest fantasies about your boss. You accidentally revealed that you think about my hands on your skin, that you wonder what it would be like to be cherished by me." Emma felt tears threatening to spill from her eyes, but she fought them back with every ounce of strength she possessed. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her completely broken, even though she felt like her world was crashing down around her. "I'll resign immediately," Emma said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You'll never have to see me again, or think about this embarrassing situation. I'll clean out my desk and be gone within the hour." Gabriel stopped pacing and moved to stand directly behind her chair. Emma could feel the heat radiating from his body, could sense his presence like an electric current in the air. When he spoke, his breath ghosted across her ear, sending involuntary shivers down her spine. "What if I told you," Gabriel said slowly, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to caress her skin, "that you don't have to leave? What if I told you that your innocent little confession might be exactly what I've been waiting to hear?" Emma twisted in her chair to look at him, confusion replacing some of her fear. "I don't understand what you mean." Gabriel moved around to face her again, his steel-gray eyes holding secrets that made Emma's stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. "I have a proposition for you, Emma Rodriguez. Something that could benefit both of us tremendously." "What kind of proposition?" Emma asked warily, though part of her desperately wanted to hear what he had to say. Gabriel's smile widened, and this time there was something predatory in it that made Emma's breath catch in her throat. I need someone to play a role for me. Someone sweet and innocent who can convince my business associates that I'm capable of genuine human emotion. Someone whose pure heart and obvious adoration would make me appear more trustworthy and approachable. Emma stared at him in shock, trying to process what he was suggesting. You want me to pretend to be in love with you? Not pretend, Gabriel corrected, reaching out to touch her cheek with fingers that were surprisingly gentle despite the coldness in his eyes. I want you to actually fall in love with me. Completely, desperately, hopelessly in love. The kind of love that consumes every thought and makes you willing to do anything for the person who holds your heart. The touch of his fingers against her skin sent electricity coursing through Emma's entire body, just as she had imagined in her dreams. But instead of the tenderness she had fantasized about, there was something calculating in his caress that made her pull back instinctively. Why would you want that? Emma asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of desire and growing dread. Gabriel's hand dropped from her face, and he moved to sit behind his desk, suddenly all business again. Because, my dear Emma, a man in love is seen as trustworthy. A man who has won the heart of an innocent young woman appears to have a conscience, a moral compass. My business dealings require a certain level of trust from investors and partners, and your obvious devotion would provide me with exactly the kind of reputation I need. Emma felt something cold settling in her stomach as the true nature of his proposition became clear. You want to use me? I want to offer you an opportunity, Gabriel corrected smoothly. 6 months of living in luxury beyond your wildest dreams. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, the finest restaurants, exclusive events. You'll move into my penthouse, be seen on my arm at every important function, and in return, I'll pay you more money than you could earn in 10 years at your current salary. Emma's mind was reeling as she tried to understand what he was really asking of her. And what would you expect from me in return? Gabriel leaned back in his chair, his eyes roaming over her in a way that made Emma feel exposed despite being fully clothed. Complete devotion, total adoration. You'll look at me like I'm the answer to every prayer you've ever whispered. You'll smile when I enter a room, laugh at my jokes, hang on my every word. In public, you'll be the perfect girlfriend, madly in love and grateful for my attention. And in private? Emma asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Gabriel's smile turned sharp and dangerous. In private, you'll learn exactly why so many women have tried and failed to capture my interest. You'll discover that the man you've been dreaming about doesn't exist. And the real Gabriel Blackwood is far more complicated than your innocent fantasies could ever imagine. Emma felt her heart breaking even as her body betrayed her by responding to the dark promise in his voice. This wasn't the tender, caring man from her dreams. This was someone who saw her vulnerability as a weakness to exploit, her love as a tool to be used for his own purposes. What happens after 6 months? She asked quietly. Gabriel shrugged, as if her question was of no particular importance. After 6 months, you'll have served your purpose. I'll have secured the business deals I need, and you'll have enough money to start a new life wherever you choose. We'll part ways, and you'll have learned some valuable lessons about the real world. Emma stood up from her chair, her legs unsteady, but her resolve growing stronger with each passing moment. You're talking about breaking my heart deliberately. You want me to fall in love with you knowing that you plan to discard me when I'm no longer useful. I'm offering you a chance to live your fantasies, Gabriel replied coldly. For 6 months, you'll have everything you've ever dreamed of. Isn't that worth a little heartbreak at the end? Emma looked into his steel gray eyes and saw the truth that shattered her last remaining illusions. There was no warmth there, no hidden tenderness waiting to be discovered. Gabriel Blackwood was exactly what everyone said he was, a man with ice water in his veins and no capacity for genuine love. I need time to think, Emma said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded when her whole world was crumbling around her. Gabriel nodded as if he had expected this response. You have until tomorrow morning. But Emma, let me be perfectly clear about something. If you accept my offer, there will be rules. You'll belong to me for those 6 months, completely and utterly. I don't share what's mine, even temporarily. Emma felt a shiver run through her at his possessive words, but she forced herself to meet his gaze directly. And if I refuse? Then you'll clean out your desk and find employment elsewhere, Gabriel said with casual indifference. I can't have employees harboring inappropriate fantasies about me. It creates an uncomfortable work environment. Emma nodded, understanding that either way, her time at Blackwood Enterprises was coming to an end. She walked toward the door on trembling legs, but Gabriel's voice stopped her before she could escape. Emma, he called out, and when she turned back to look at him, his smile was razor sharp and completely without mercy. Sweet dreams tonight. Dream about everything I could give you, and everything I could take away. Shattered dreams and new beginnings. Emma spent the entire night sitting by her small apartment window, staring out at the city lights and trying to make sense of the impossible choice Gabriel had presented her with. Her reflection in the glass showed a young woman whose innocence had been shattered in the span of a single conversation, whose dreams had been twisted into something dark and manipulative. Part of her wanted to accept Gabriel's offer, to live out her fantasies even knowing they would end in heartbreak. The promise of luxury, of being wanted by the man she had admired from afar, called to the naive part of her heart that still believed love could conquer all. But as the hours passed and dawn approached, Emma began to understand something crucial about herself and about the man she thought she loved. Gabriel Blackwood had never been the man of her dreams. He was a projection, a fantasy built on stolen glances and imagined conversations. The real Gabriel was cold, calculating, and completely incapable of the tenderness she craved. Accepting his proposition wouldn't be living her dream. It would be participating in her own emotional destruction. When morning came, Emma dressed carefully in her best outfit, a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. She spent extra time on her hair and makeup, not because she wanted to impress Gabriel, but because she needed to feel strong and confident for what she was about to do. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt different this time. Instead of the nervous flutter she usually experienced when approaching Gabriel's domain, Emma felt a sense of calm determination settling over her shoulders like armor. She knocked on his office door with steady knuckles and entered when he called for her to come in. Gabriel was standing by his window, looking out at the city he ruled with such iron control. When he turned to face her, his expression was expectant, almost smug, as if he already knew what her answer would be. I've made my decision, Emma said, her voice clear and strong in the spacious office. And? Gabriel prompted, moving to lean against his desk in that predatory way that had once made her heart race with excitement, but now simply made her sad for what she had lost. I decline your offer, Emma said simply, watching as surprise flickered across Gabriel's features for just a moment before his mask of indifference slid back into place. I see, Gabriel said coolly. May I ask why you're choosing to throw away this opportunity? Emma took a deep breath, gathering her courage for what she needed to say. Because I deserve better than to be someone's tool. Because the man I thought I loved doesn't exist. And I refuse to participate in my own emotional destruction for the sake of your business deals. Gabriel's eyes narrowed slightly, and Emma caught a glimpse of anger beneath his controlled facade. You're making a mistake, Emma. You'll never have another chance like this. You're right, Emma agreed, surprising him with her ready acceptance of his words. I'll never have another chance to sell my heart to someone who has no intention of cherishing it. I'll never have another opportunity to pretend that cruelty is romance or that being used is the same as being loved. Something flickered in Gabriel's steel gray eyes. Something that might have been respect if Emma hadn't known better. You're more naive than I thought if you believe love exists in the real world. Emma smiled, and for the first time since entering his office, she felt genuinely happy. Maybe I am naive, but I'd rather be naive and hopeful than cynical and empty. I'd rather believe in love and risk being disappointed than give up on it entirely. She moved toward the door, but before leaving, she turned back to face Gabriel one last time. I feel sorry for you, Gabriel Blackwood. Not because you're alone, but because you choose to be alone. Not because you can't love, but because you're too afraid to try. Gabriel's face hardened into marble coldness. Don't pity me, Emma Rodriguez. Pity yourself when you're struggling to pay rent in some rundown apartment while I'm living in luxury with someone who was smart enough to take what I offered. Emma's smile widened, and she felt a lightness in her chest that she hadn't experienced in months. I'd rather struggle with hope than live in luxury without love. Goodbye, Gabriel. I hope someday you find whatever it is you're really looking for. Emma left Blackwood Enterprises that day with her head held high and her heart, though bruised, intact. She spent the next few weeks job hunting, living off her modest savings, and slowly rebuilding her sense of self-worth. The experience had been painful, but it had also taught her valuable lessons about her own strength and the importance of not compromising her values for anyone. 3 months later, Emma was working as a secretary at a small publishing house, a job that paid less than her previous position, but filled her with genuine satisfaction. Her boss, David Chen, was a kind man in his 40s who treated all his employees with respect and appreciated Emma's dedication and gentle nature. It was David who first noticed Emma's talent for storytelling when she submitted some suggestions for improving a manuscript they were considering. He encouraged her to try writing her own stories, and to Emma's amazement, she discovered that she had a gift for creating the kind of romantic tales she had always loved to read. Your writing has such genuine emotion in it, David told her one afternoon as they discussed her latest short story. You understand what real love looks like. The kind that's built on respect and mutual admiration, rather than power and control. Emma smiled, thinking about how much she had learned about herself in the months since leaving Gabriel's world. I learned the difference between fantasy and reality the hard way. But I'm grateful for the lesson, even though it hurt at the time. One evening, as Emma was leaving the publishing house, she encountered a familiar figure waiting by the building's entrance. Gabriel Blackwood stood there in his expensive suit, looking every bit as imposing as she remembered. But Emma felt no flutter of attraction, no skip in her heartbeat. The spell he had once cast over her imagination was completely broken. Emma, Gabriel said, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. I wanted to talk to you. Hello, Gabriel, Emma replied calmly, not moving closer, but not running away either. What can I do for you? Gabriel seemed momentarily taken aback by her composed response. I heard you were working here. I wanted to see how you were doing. I'm doing very well, thank you, Emma said honestly. I'm happy, fulfilled, and surrounded by people who value me for who I am rather than what I can do for them. Gabriel's jaw tightened slightly. I also wanted to tell you that my business deal fell through. The investors decided I wasn't trustworthy enough for their liking. Emma felt a moment of sympathy for him, but it was the kind of compassion she would feel for any struggling person, not the desperate longing she had once harbored. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm sure you'll find other opportunities. I keep thinking about what you said, Gabriel admitted, his steel gray eyes showing a vulnerability Emma had never seen before. About being afraid to try. Maybe you were right. Emma studied his face carefully, seeing a man who was perhaps beginning to question his own choices, but still had a long way to go before he could truly change. Fear is something we all deal with, Gabriel, but we have to decide whether we're going to let it control us, or whether we're going to choose courage instead. Gabriel nodded slowly, as if considering her words. Do you think, he asked hesitantly, that someone like me could ever learn to love properly? Emma's heart softened slightly, not with romantic longing, but with genuine human compassion. I think anyone can learn to love if they're willing to be vulnerable, to put someone else's happiness before their own, and to risk being hurt. But Gabriel, you have to want to change for yourself, not because you think it will help you manipulate others more effectively. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, staring down at the sidewalk. When he looked up again, there was something different in his expression, something that might have been the beginning of genuine self-reflection. Thank you, Emma, he said quietly, for being honest with me, even when it wasn't easy. Emma smiled, feeling at peace with this final chapter of their story. I hope you find what you're looking for, Gabriel. Real love, real connection, real happiness. Everyone deserves that, even you. As Gabriel walked away into the city twilight, Emma felt a sense of closure settling over her heart. She had loved an illusion, had her heart broken by reality, but had emerged stronger and wiser from the experience. She understood now that true love couldn't be bought, manipulated, or controlled. It had to be freely given and received with open, honest hearts. 6 months later, Emma's first novel was accepted for publication. It was a romance, naturally, but one that emphasized the importance of mutual respect, genuine connection, and the courage to be vulnerable with someone worthy of that vulnerability. The dedication read, "To everyone who has ever chosen hope over cynicism and love over fear." Emma never saw Gabriel Blackwood again, but sometimes she wondered if he had learned to open his heart to real love. She hoped he had, not because she harbored any remaining romantic feelings for him, but because she believed everyone deserved the chance to experience the transformative power of genuine connection. Her own heart remained open to love, but now she knew the difference between fantasy and reality. She was no longer looking for a powerful man to sweep her off her feet. Instead, she was ready for an equal partner who would choose to walk beside her through life's adventures. Someone who would cherish her dreams and support her goals while sharing his own hopes and fears with equal vulnerability. Emma Rodriguez had learned that the most important love story was the one she wrote with herself. The journey of self-discovery that taught her she was worthy of respect, kindness, and genuine affection. Everything else would be a beautiful addition to a life already full of purpose and joy. The end. This romantic story explores themes of self-worth, the difference between fantasy and reality, and the importance of choosing genuine love over manipulation and control. Emma's journey from innocent infatuation to mature self-understanding demonstrates that sometimes our greatest heartbreaks lead to our most important personal growth.